Hello, welcome to beautiful Florida. And behind me, you'll see that I have our Intercoastal Waterway. And I apologize ahead of time if I have to stop because of distractions, but I really want to kind of be in the element for my presentation. Behind us is the Intercoastal Waterway, and beyond that is what is known as the Barrier Islands. So in Florida, we have a unique landscape feature known as Barrier Islands. Basically, as currents, tides, and whatnot circulate within the Gulf of Mexico, the coastal substrate of sand is able to be transferred north and south along that coast naturally. Now, as you can see, if I can align here, you can see development. Yay, that's tourist capital of the world right there. And then on the other side, this is more of an undeveloped natural coast. So I got a little lucky that I could find a place to show that to you today. Essentially, my topic was beach renourishment, where I wanted to focus on efforts to counteract that from an economic scope or lens, as we have discussed in Module 7 here. And essentially, the main things that affect beach erosion are navigation, property rights, and funding, which definitely are included in the realm of economics. So basically, development is a big issue because, we want to live by the water. We're always drawn to water. And Florida actually, and especially the Clearwater area, has 74.2% of visitors that have been found through economic survey are actually tourists that visit the beaches, with a total economic impact of $2.8 billion just for Pinellas County alone. And 35,800 jobs are supported, and 88 million state and local taxes are paid. And that's information provided by the Pinellas County Data Research Services, Inc. From 2009. But basically, a lot of what is going to happen around here is to promote activity, recreation, and quality of life around water resources, which is heavily heavily influenced by economics in the area. So, leading to that, beach erosion is a huge concern for our area and has been handled in a pretty consistent way up to this point. Sorry, apparently it's a car convention or something. So because of that, economically, it has been basically a funding issue, where during my study and research from this perspective economically for this class, I've noticed there are other alternatives that could be investigated from an economic perspective. Basically, the cause of beach erosion that's of concern, because like I said, it is a natural process as it shifts north and south on the beach, is navigation and development. So the federal government, like I said, I mentioned this is the Intracoastal Waterway. The Intracoastal Waterway is a federal project that starts in probably around Maine, New England area, comes all the way around Florida, and it ends up in Texas. And basically, the federal government wanted to ensure a secure and reliable method of navigation to transport goods. So highly economic in that sense. And I didn't find values on the total cost of the Intracoastal, but looking back now, that probably would have been pretty valuable information. But because of that, to focus on beach renourishment, those permanent structures have caused huge environmental impact, because basically, as currents are moving north and south, tides are coming in, they hit those permanent structures, and it affects how currents and how sands are transported, usually causing the sands to erode more quickly because of the concentrated currents. So as a response to that, many coastal areas and managers have instituted a beach renourishment program to address those occurrences in the short term. Now, beach renourishment is essentially a process where they take sands from a source beach and put them back on an eroded beach to extend the property lines and whatnot. And there's a state process in Florida. A lot of the states differ from each other, but in Florida it's pretty spelled out in the Florida Constitution and in the Florida statutes. So the benefits to that is that property, both public and private property rights, are protected, and they're able to keep the value that's tied to their property. In Florida, we have both public and private property associated with coastal lands. That's determined by mean high water line or erosion control line. Once a beach is nourished, though, that does become state property, which, based on a property right structure, as we discussed in this class, a firm, confident structure needs to have exclusivity, transferability, enforcement. And really, the act of beach renourishment and beach protection does provide those aspects to both public and private property owners. Where you get conflict seems to be with, or what I've learned through research is, through development. And part of that has to do with the fact that development has occurred that hasn't necessarily been within the realm, because development occurred prior to recognizing the impacts of beach erosion and development on the beach. So therefore, we're now seeing how development is impacting and hindering our ability to truly have a sustainable and efficient beach recovery protection program. And there's a lot of money that goes in with that as well in economics, because, like I said, tourism is a huge industry here that we rely on and often takes priority when we're considering alternatives to our current processes. So, let's see. Sorry, I got distracted for a second there. So, moving on with an economic lens, when you're considering our current practices, I really see how economics can be used as a tool to help not only, in a lot of cases, justify our current practices. So in this case, continued funding for these projects that are only really giving solutions for the short term versus the long term ends up being quite inefficient and unsustainable in the long run. And it actually justifies the fact that we can continue these processes at this time. But I see the use of economics and assessment as a way to also support a major change. In this case, a major change could involve development in general. There have been places that have seen development or had improper siting that could be reevaluated, or newer technologies to help dampen the impact that development has on coastal areas that influences erosion can be applied, and moving forward we can maybe see improvements in beach erosion from that aspect, and it can definitely be supported as a economic goal. So that's one of the main things that I was able to take. There isn't a clear answer yet on what the best attribute is, but I would have to say that based on the project that I chose and what I was able to determine, that our current role modes of beach renourishment probably aren't sustainable in the long term, and the research and my ability to talk to people that are actively doing coastal management kind of hint at that, since federal funding in the past, because the federal government acknowledged that navigation and permanent structures are able to, are causing impacts, they help fund these renourishment projects by 60%, and then local and state governments make up for the remaining 40%, which is really a public cost monetarily, and is funded by taxpayer dollars, which is another controversy per se, because a lot of people see it as a lot of money to benefit people that are only living on the coast, even though those areas are also public access areas once they are nourished based on the public trust doctrine. So moving away from that, it's kind of imperative that we look at alternatives to these using economics, because the economics are both going to show us through summary that there are alternatives, and we are going to have to be able to justify these changes. And I really see justification coming from economics and looking at sustainable and efficient, I apologize again for the road traffic noise, but looking at sustainable and efficient markets for both marketable and non-market attributes that are affecting beach renourishment is going to be a huge influence on how coastal managers are able to manage the resource, improve environmental quality, and be able to fund these. And I'm sorry I got distracted, but to return back to the federal, a lot of the federal programs are looking at reducing or eliminating funding for these, and there is a website that I can provide in the comments when I post the video that basically outlines a really great comprehensive plan economically on how the federal government was aiming to address beach renourishment, but it seems like it has not been fully supported. It's not being maintained any further, because I think they're looking at having states and local governments be more responsible for these, because it is a regional, local, and finite kind of resource when it comes to funding and eroding beaches, especially when the source might be from decisions made on a local and state level. So I hope this gives you some more insight on a very difficult economic problem that, well, it's not really an economic problem, but an environmental concern that is highly dependent on thorough economic assessment to support or promote change. So thank you for taking the time to view my video, and feel free to comment, and I will answer questions the best I can, and have a great day.